quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast, so there I was. It's how all great aviation tales begin. This week, it's Balls-13.
Balls-13!
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Hey, did you say episode number 132?
I did, I think. If
Okay,
I didn't,
well,
you just did.
You know what? Maybe I just spaced out for a second. Dude, 132. How did that happen?
I know. What is going on? It's like we're doing a regular thing here now, Fig.
I know. It's almost like a part-time job.
Right? Exactly. So
Anyway, Balls-13 with Jay. What a great show.
Fantastic show. Jay's retired brigadier general, a lawyer.
Another
hold that against him.
Another, what's the term? Another underachiever. Thank you. I was having a senior moment.
Well, there's that. So we've never been older than we are today, Fig. What can you say?
Thank you.
A fantastic show. Sadly, we lost Jay at the very end. Not permanently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's still with us.
He's okay. Nobody was. Yeah. He's okay. We had some technical.
His internet died, 55 minutes into recording the show, and we never got him back. So the show ends kind of abruptly, and we apologize for that. But there's one episode this week with General Jay, and I don't know. It's tough to tease this without giving it all away. I think I say, he was flying a KC-135. Yeah. And he lost a couple engines.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
And during a combat air refueling sortie.
Yeah.
And
for those that don't know, the 135 is a 4-engine jet, so he still had half his engines.
It's not like, he didn't have any engines. Yeah, but there's a lot that goes into this, and it's going
to water your eyes when you hear this.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. And he's got a great story. How he got interested in aviation is truly, it's really cool.
It really is. Yeah.
I don't want to give it away.
Fun. No camels were harmed during the creation of this episode.
There was that theme that reared its ugly head once again.
Indeed.
But like you said, it was close.
Yeah.
No animals were harmed, or no livestock was harmed.
Right. And I think we leave it at that with this week because this is such an amazing aviation event that, look, I'm going to have pictures of it up on the website. It'll be embedded into the audio. So if you're using a smartphone, you should see at that chapter what his airplane looked like. It's amazing.
And wasn't it also included in one of the series air disasters?
It was. Thank you I forgot to mention that. Yes.
Yeah. It's a palm sweater. I mean, what these guys went through is it's a air disaster worthy episode. Bingo. For crying out loud.
And it was their first combat mission since the beginning of Gulf War I that they took off without their parachutes on. Tempting fate, man. You're just tempting fate. What the hell are you thinking?
You don't need them. Right?
Right?
You need them. Wow.
Yeah, parachutes are for you dummies who can't fly without an airplane. All right. Hey, FTIratings.com is again our sponsor this week. Thank you, gentlemen, for stepping up and helping bring these shows to everybody. We're deeply grateful.
FTI Ratings.
Yeah. Why would you go to FTIratings.com, Fig?
Well, because they know what the hell they're doing, number one. Number two, Bingo. It's in a full motion simulator as opposed to a 1952
full motion airplane
Apache, that smells like moldy socks and 100 low lead and God knows how many things are about to fall off the plane.
And things that have died in there and sagging headliners.
Yeah.
Super hot.
Well,
and not only do they know what they're doing, you're going to look like you know what you're doing when you take a ride with a designated examiner because they're going to teach you everything you need to know and look professional.
Hey, as a side note, I gave a check ride a couple of days ago in the sim doing my normal job, and I was getting my FAA observation
Okay.
From 2 FAA guys. One of them used to be an FTI guy. He retired and then did FTI for about 8 years, and now he works for the FAA. So it's a good organization because they know what they're doing, and they've got their kind of fingers everywhere.
It's like they're connected. That's awesome, too, because that tells me, just a kind of a side note on this, I have a tax guy who's IRS auditor, audit handler, is a former IRS agent. So that's why you want these FTI guys. They're connected to the FAA, and when the FAA examiner gets there, he's going to know you know your stuff. Half the battle.
Right. They're going to tell you. They're going to show you exactly what you need to know in an environment that is safe, high speed, man.
Right.
It's like being there.
Speed. Exactly. And you get $100 off if you mention us. So do that. Hey, Aircav Chris reared his ugly head and then bought a cap from our merch site, and put that on his ugly head, and actually behind his bar he sent me a picture of that. So sorry, Aircraft Chris, not that ugly. Not any uglier than us anyway.
Well, you're a whole lot better looking than we are, brother. Shall I read his note?
Yeah.
Hope you all are doing great. Quick note that I made a $100 donation straight through the website instead of Patreon. So thank you, Aircav Chris.
Indeed.
We really are humbled and appreciate your donation. Many thanks for keeping your show rolling at an outstanding level. I've listened to every episode since I was your guest on number 82 last year. Man, that seems like forever ago, doesn't it?
Right.
Best wishes and blessings to you and your families through the upcoming holiday season, a.k.a. Aircraft Chris.
Nice.
Thanks, brother.
We got another $100 donation from a fellow Marine, Beitar. Vietnam vet, Rio combat missions in South Vietnam, and we're going to have him on soon. Chatted with
I can't
him
wait for
week.
that. Yeah, F4 Rio, F4 radar intercept officer, the backseater. Yep. I can't wait for that.
No, I'm excited too. And he sent me, when I asked him for talking points, because that's how we get notes from people so we can keep the conversation flowing, and he sent me his book, so I'm going to ask him for permission to publish that, much like we did with Into the Wild Blue Yonder. And
Rosie?
I'm sorry, don't remember the show with Rosie. Yeah, it was about 90, somewhere between 90 and 95. Rosie was a nose gunner in B-24s in World War II. And that's on our website. I'm going to get a links page up so that you can find things like these unpublished, but published books. So that's an amazing read so far. So
yeah.
And thank you also to Patrick Miller. He's been with us over a year, became a fully qualified section lead this week, upping his monthly donation to $10. Thank you.
Patrick.
And to all of you who've been with us well over a year now, God bless you. Thank you. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you separating money from your wallet and putting it into our coffers so we can keep this thing going. So, and we got another special one this week, Fig. Who's that from?
From Michelle.
Indeed. Michelle Langseth, thank you so much. Became a division lead, double division lead, actually. So $30 a month. Thank you. God bless you. We are grateful.
Very humbling.
She actually was the resource for a video that I have put up on Patreon. Yeah. So more than a 90-minute video of Lawman, in-cockpit video of him doing show practice, and you hear all the audio and that kind of stuff. And some of it was of him giving a ride to a team member who was leaving the team, and some of it was like professional news commentators as they were doing. I don't know if they were doing a show or a practice show, whatever. Go to patreon.com. Well, let's go to sothereiwas.us/Patreon. Sign up for $5 a month, and you too can get your eyes on that really cool video. So.
Side note, Lawman, or who sent us the email? Was it Lawman or Sweet?
It was a text, I believe, wasn't it?
Text with the picture. It was Lawman, Yo, and Swede all together. They were at an event where was the last air show of the year?
Swede or Beef?
Oh, they were all together. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
It was Swede Yo. So it was Lawman, Swede, and Beef all together. Because they all showed up. They all went to this last air show. It was the Blue Angel and the
homecoming show for the Blues last weekend here.
So thanks for that,
we're talking about this today. It's election day, November 5th, and so last weekend was the Blues homecoming. So
that's awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for that. That was really cool.
That was a cool pick. Thank you, Lawman. I think people are sick of hearing us yammering, Fig. Maybe we get out of the way and let Jay do some yammering and scare the hell out of
the
him.
way. Listen, because hey, have something to wipe your palms on, because mine started sweating as soon as he started talking about this event.
Yeah,
so, and he's a true gentleman, and I think you're really going to enjoy this.
Indeed, he is. So, hey, lesson learned this week: don't take off without your parachute strapped on.
Yeah, with no ejection seat. Come on, bro, have that parachute right there, like strapped on you.
Put it on.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit, on the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. There I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was, 25,000 feet, beautiful afternoon, Saudi Arabian desert, cruising towards another refueling. All of a sudden, our 300,000-pound airplane turns 110 degrees to the left in a turn, which we didn't put it in, and then followed immediately by a 90-degree bank to the right, which we didn't put it in. We finally got it settled out, and lo and behold, we had fire lights, we had engine indications that were all funny. The two engines on the left side showed that they were on fire. We asked the boom operator to go back and look and say, are they on fire? Check them for us. He comes back, he says, well, they're not on fire. They're gone.
Wow.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Right? And that is how all terrifying and great aviation tales begin. Greetings, everybody listening to So There I Was. Repeat here. Where's my co-host?
Well, I'm home now. Thank you, and Carney. And it is our pleasure to welcome Jay to the show. Welcome, Jay. And that, my palms are sweating right now. I can't wait to hear but we'll get to that. Holy cow. Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you guys for having me. It's looking forward to this. It'll be fun.
Well, this is great. We're glad you're here, especially after that story.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that. But you didn't just wake up one day and find yourself in command of a KC-135. When did you first become interested in aviation? How'd that come about?
Oh, gosh. My dad flew B-17s in World War II, and he ended up getting shot down and spending some time in prison camp before the end of the war. But I was always enthralled with World War II and with all the beautiful airplanes that they produced then. Built models, did all that. And finally, I guess I was about at 19, I guess, when I first got my first ride, and I was hooked and couldn't not do it. Still doing it and love every bit of it.
Nice. Wow, that's awesome.
Dad flew B-17s.
Yeah.
Right. That's
you don't hear that every day. That's pretty incredible.
I actually got to go up in a B-17. They were, we had one here in Kansas City, and they were giving rides, and my son and I jumped on, and she's smooth. I'll give her that. Not the same flight my dad would have taken, but very, very cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
They are amazing birds. I had the good fortune to ride in a B-24 one time, and yeah, that's a different bird. A lot of pulleys and cables and push rods and levers to get those big old motors running and keep them running, and you got to baby those things. Lots of oil. Oh,
lots of oil.
So
what's really amazing
about a big 14, 18 cylinder recip though. That
you're a Boeing guy. If you go back and look at the landing gear on the B-17, the B-29, the 707, I mean, they all somehow look the same. I don't know if they're the exact same parts, but Boeing knew how to make something and they kept making it.
Right. Yeah. If it ain't If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Or if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. That seems to be the motto now. So anyway, well, so how'd you go from your first ride and decide to get into aviation? What was your path?
Well, so I make this not real long story, but I went to college at Kansas State. I was an ag guy, and ultimately I got to go home and start farming. This was in the early 80s. Interest rates were really high. It was a very short-term experiment, lasted about 3 or 4 years. But while I was home, Garnett, Kansas, we've got about a 2,000-foot strip there. I took lessons and got my private pilot's license while I was there. And after the farming was over for me, I ended up going to law school. And I was having lunch with a friend there, and I was talking about joining the Air Force because I just still had that bug. And he said, "You don't want to do that." He says, "You ought to join the Air National Guard." And of course, I said, like everybody does, "What's that?" And he explained it to me. And it turns out he had just married the base commander's daughter, and he was going to nav school. And I went over and interviewed and got a job as a pilot. And they sent me off to pilot training. So that kept it alive.
Nice.
What year was that?
Oh, let's see. Got commissioned in 84. So I think I showed up in Del Rio, Texas the day before Thanksgiving of 1984.
Did you say guard or was that active duty?
That's a guard. Yeah.
In the guard.
I'm a guard baby.
I wasn't sure. I thought
that kind of thing.
Right.
That's awesome. Yeah. Another Del Rio grad here. 100 successful missions over northern Mexico.
And because you're a guard guy, you knew the platform you were going to, right? So it wasn't really, you weren't really worried about competition and all that, which is kind of nice.
Yes and no. Everybody in that, you get there and you get competitive whether you are or not. And of course, as soon as you get there and you start to do pretty well, and I got FARD, Fighter Attack Recce, qualified. So then you start, I could have been a fighter pilot, and you start looking around to see what those options are. And back then, the A-10 unit in Kansas City was pretty prominent. And I called them and said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And they said, "No, you're a tanker guy." Oh. I said, "Wait a minute. I've never even been in a tanker." You go, "It doesn't matter, So, no, I knew where I was going. I'm really glad I ended up there. Had a nice long run and enjoyed every minute of it.
It's probably poor form to steal the other unit's guys anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's bad form.
So, awesome. So, I assume then you flew the Tweet and then the T-38?
Yep, Tweets, 38s. 38 was, that's a ton of fun. Great airplane. Love to go do that some more. Really enjoyed that. Got to do a couple of 4 ships at the end there, and that was a great time. And watched all the other guys go off to fighter school, and I ended up in Merced, California, doing KC-135s.
Okay. And a friend of mine who actually went to KC-135s after flying Harriers told me if you agree with this. He said it's about 6 weeks of school all crammed into 5 months. Spot
on. That's spot on. We're going to take our time here and make sure you got it down. Yeah, it's like most Air Force training, and it was still fun. It was instructive. Had a great time out there. This was back in the A model days, so we were water burning, and most of our instructions, the missions were 10, 11 hours because there'd be nav legs and refuelings, and more nav legs and landings. It took a bit, but learned a lot.
Yeah. Wow. That hurts thinking about it.
Yeah.
I get to do those now at work, but there's 2 crews and I've got a nice galley and a bunk bed and everything else I could want. All the creature comforts and time to take a break. I'm thinking while you're in school, you weren't taking long several-hour breaks during these flights.
No, it's funny. I guess we had 1 instructor pilot and 2 students, and we'd switch off. But if you weren't flying, you were sitting in the instructor seat trying to soak up whatever was going on. And the more time you spend with it, the more you learn. And so it paid off. I mean, we did some fun stuff that I don't think they get to do anymore. Some of which, as it turns out, was helpful. Back then, we got to do Dutch roll training in the airplane. We'd actually take it up to altitude, turn the yaw damper off, and get it into a Dutch roll, and then take it out. And that was every day.
Yeah,
of course,
which
do
is
that now. But,
terrifying to me, thinking about doing that in a tanker. So explain to our listeners, if you would please, what Dutch roll is without taking them through an entire aerodynamics course.
That's good.
Well, yeah, it's a bit, but any swept wing airplane has a tendency to, one wing gets in front of the other, it'll rise up, and the other one will fall, and it can get into a back and forth motion. It's called a Dutch roll. And you can typically recover that if it doesn't go too far with just aileron inputs and pay attention to the rudder. But it's all that goes away when you turn the yaw damper on, which is why big airplanes have yaw dampers, and the rudder just takes care of it. So we practiced in case the rudder went out.
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, do you have boosted flight controls in the KC-135?
No, it was cables and pulleys, yeah.
No hydraulic boost.
The rudder was power. It had power to it, yeah.
Okay.
And then you mentioned water burning. Fig and I both are quite well aware of what water burning is, because in the Harrier, we were water burning. In fact, we used to go to the 135 bases to teach students to hover the Harrier, because they typically had concrete runways, couldn't hover over asphalt, and huge water tankers. We had these little piddly things that we got sold up the river on that, I don't know, they took like all afternoon to generate 300 gallons of water. And the water tankers at the 135 bases, those guys were, they had like 20,000 gallons of water, and they could pump us full in a couple minutes. So, because it was all distilled water. Could you explain why you put distilled water into a jet engine?
Well, jets were made in the 50s, or started to be built in the 50s, 56, 57. The motors that they put on it were straight jets, basically, and they needed, it just didn't have much power. And if they injected distilled water, it increased the thrust by about 30%, as long as you had water, which in our case was about 110 seconds. So on takeoff roll, the co-pilot would hit 2 switches, it would start injecting water, and you wanted to be off the ground and helpfully flaps up before the water ran out, because as soon as the water ran out, you knew it. The airplane just kind of slowed down. And
squatted in, huh?
Squatted in. It was very, very noticeable. And so it worked. It made a lot of noise. It made a lot of smoke, but it worked.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Run them higher. And I guess that was the beauty. They weren't hotter. You could run them faster without running them super hot. So
yeah, it actually cooled them a little bit as well. So
yeah. Oh, there you go.
Look at that. Look at that.
So yeah, for those of you watching live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Rumble, Styx has put up a picture of a 135 spitting water out all over the place there.
Yeah, when we did an alert start, which is what that looked like, they actually put cartridges in each of the engines that you'd bang off, and that would start them to turn. And there was always a lot of smoke and steam and everything else that came out of there at the time. So it was kind of fun to watch.
Nice.
Cartridges. That sounds like explosive cartridges. Like boom. Yeah. And then it start turning.
Start them spinning.
No kidding. Was that the normal way to do a start, or did you use an air cart on the ground, or?
Well, typically that would be an alert start. So the 135 was basically built to match up with the B-52, because the KC-97 couldn't go fast enough, really. And it was built for the nuclear mission, in essence, to refuel the bombers. And so everything was built around being able to get off the ground in a very short amount of time. And so we had the ability then, with cartridges, to start all 4 engines at the same time, basically. Bang the switches, they'd go off, and
gosh,
pretty soon you had engines.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. All right. So none of that crossbleed starting or any of that, but
all right. 4 at once, bang.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had to keep everybody. There were a lot of elbows and arms flying around when that happened, but typically they'd go pretty well.
Hopefully still attached.
Hey, Jay, when you're setting alert like that, especially back when we were fighting the Cold War, what was the expected off time from the time you got the alert until you got the tanker airborne? Did you have like a window that you needed to hit every time?
Yeah, and it was always classified, and I don't know if it is anymore or not. Could very well be, but it wasn't very long. I mean, you can figure out, everybody can look on Google and figure out how long it takes for a missile inbound to hit. And the real goal was to not be there when the missiles hit.
Aha.
So, I mean, that was your
That's a
time
good
window,
goal.
whatever that might have been.
Okay. So
And you
you're
can
moving.
put any number you want on it, but it didn't matter. Everybody went as fast as they could and hit the runway running. So it was just a few minutes, really, before you were airborne.
I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was thinking you needed to get airborne to get to a spot to refuel bombers. Well, you needed to get airborne to get out of the frag pattern.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Because bombers were doing the same thing, and oftentimes we were co-located, and they had priority because they were the bombers. But yeah, it wasn't about gas right then. It was just about getting off the ground, getting out of the way.
That makes sense. Wow. So you did that. Go ahead. Repeat. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about the number of you sent us a photo of one that was I believe this one was actually in combat. Let me put it up if I can find it. But it was with some Eagles. Yeah, there it comes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, right. So if you're watching live on YouTube, we're about 18 minutes in, and I think it was 5 135s, and you said like 18 or something Eagles, but it looks like a lot more airplanes than that to me.
Yeah, there's airplanes all over.
Were you guys co-located usually when you took off, or did you meet them? Or
well, now that picture, I did not take that picture, but that picture was from Desert Storm, and it got busy over there. I mean, the airspace got busy. There were just a ton of airplanes. So we were at Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and we had a little over 100 KC-135s there, about 30 KC-10s, and about 20-some B-52s. 111s were at Taif. I mean, everybody was scattered all over Saudi Arabia and UAE. So no, we weren't co-located. Most of the time we just met somebody somewhere or hung out in an anchor and just waited for whomever to come up and get some gas.
A lot of gas passing going on in that picture, man, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Desert Storm, we're talking about WW Desert Storm 1, the big one, the one we kicked their ass real fast.
We're figuring out we're sitting in the back cheerleading, watching from the Ready Room CNN channel.
Yeah, we were the only Harrier squadron that didn't deploy for that. So yeah, we saw all our buddies taking off on CNN and all that stuff. So when did you guys pack your bag and get over to that theater? Was it like September-ish?
Well, I'm trying to remember the date. It was August X. I can't remember the date that Saddam invaded, but
it was the end of August is when he crossed the line.
Our unit, I wasn't on this flight, but our unit had a jet in Saudi Arabia 4 days later.
Oh, wow.
And they were one of the first ones in. And that was Desert Shield at that point. And as we started to build up forces, it became obvious that we were going to have a lot of tankers. Our guys moved down to Jeddah and started to set things up there. We didn't get federalized until December. And at that point, our unit became a lead unit. We took all of our airplanes, we had 8 at the time, over with us, a bunch of people, a bunch of parts, to start that 1701st Air Refueling Wing, if you will, in Jeddah. And as it turns out, our commander, our National Guard commander from Kansas, Mick Byer, ends up commanding the whole dang thing. He showed up. He got along well with the prince. They liked each other, and the prince said, "Okay, you're it. You're the guy." And so he ended up commanding that throughout the entire conflict, which was kind of cool for us.
Okay,
yeah.
So used a term that we hadn't heard before. I'm 99.9% sure I know what it means, but what is federalization? You got federalized.
Oh,
Title 10, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're Title 32, which is don't worry about all the legal stuff, even though I'm a lawyer, I don't care. But you're working for the state, and you're not really an active duty troop. And you're not treated like an active duty troop. But for everybody to go over in that, they activated or federalized all the National Guard and Reserve folks that went. And so now we're Title 10 active duty troops, just like everybody else. And as I remember that order, it started on whatever the date was in December, and it said continued until It was an indefinite date, in other words.
Yeah.
You're ours until we don't want you. So, it could have been 6 days, could have been 6 months, could have been 3 or 4 years, but it was an interesting time. I've still got that somewhere lying around.
Yeah. Yeah. And where were you on 9/11?
On 9/11?
Well, hold on a second. We're talking about,
a
couple different things.
Never mind. Go back.
Hold on now. Slow down.
Yeah, I just jumped ahead 9 years. Sorry, 10 years actually. Let's hold that question for later. Where were you in August? Were you working, or were you semi-active, pretty active with the unit, or what was going on?
Well, so I was a weekender. So I had a real job. I always say I had a real job, practicing law, and I happened to be. It was in Kansas City, but when Saddam invaded, I was actually in St. Louis in a hotel, doing some work over there. And I watched it on TV, and about midnight, my phone rang, and they tracked me down. They said, you're being recalled. And so in the car back to Topeka, Kansas, and they got everybody together until they figured out, because nobody knew what the next step was.
Right.
But they knew they wanted to gather everybody up, start getting airplanes ready. And so they did that. As it turns out, we still had an alert commitment. We were trying to get guys over to the theater. And so I spent a lot of time sitting alert during that August to December timeframe, so everybody else could go fly, and I'd do work and go to alert and that kind of thing. So there was a lot going on right there. It got easier, actually, when they decided to send everybody over, because then you knew what you were doing and how to do it.
That kind of makes sense, actually. Yeah, that no more hanging by the string. It's like, here you're going.
Yeah, and it was interesting. First time, really, the Air National Guard had been called out to such a degree. We had, at that time, so-called E-model engines, which were mostly old TWA motors that they'd bought to put on the tanker because they were a lot better than the original A models. And before my time and above my grade, I don't know how they got it done, but the National Guard tankers all had these E-model engines, which were pretty good. And they were just starting to get R models at the time that this was going on. I guess that started in the late 80s. But they wanted the R models to stay home and sit on alert. They still had that nuclear mission. And so the National Guard tankers really took a big load of the Desert Storm just because we had slightly better engines than the A models. There were A models there too, but it was the first time we really got those to show up. So it was good.
Were the E model engines high bypass turbofans, or were they the turbojets?
They were TF-33s. They were, in today's standards, they weren't high bypass, but they were fan engines.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, let's talk briefly about that then too. But what is a high bypass turbofan, and why is that important? And what did that do for the airplane? Because I know they put those on all the airplanes. Why?
So the airplane had 4 of these old engines, the straight jets, and it was just barely enough, really. I think around 11,000, 12,000 pounds of thrust each. Our engines got them up around, don't hold me to the numbers, 16, something like that, 1,000 pounds each, with thrust reverse. And that was a big deal. And so it just made the airplane more reliable and more flyable. The weights really didn't change at all. The airplane just can go up to 322,000 pounds. And you could do that on the water burning. You can do it on the E's. You certainly can do it on the R's. It's just a lot easier with more power. And the E's they saved gas. It didn't burn as much gas. And they just provided more power. So, win-win there on almost every front.
Yeah. So, and more efficient down low too, right? The turbofan? Yeah,
way more efficient down low. And the old airplane, you could take it as high as you could get it, and you could probably go 0.88, 0.89. I mean, it would smoke along. The bigger the motor gets, the more drag it creates. So you're very efficient, but you can't go as fast. So good trade-off, as it turns out.
Yeah. So actually, Fig and I are very familiar with that. The Harrier is fastest jet in the world from 0 to 400 knots. And then at about 400 on, those jet intakes were more like jet speed brakes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah. You can feed it more gas, but it just won't go any faster. So
you're just beating your head against a brick wall at that point. So all right, well, very cool. So
can I ask a question? I'm going to make an assumption here. Until until that story you opened with, had you had any white knuckle experiences in the tanker? Or had it always been pretty reliable?
Yeah, or even in flight school.
In flight school, I think I shut one engine down in a 38. No, that's sort of no big deal, really. Our maintenance was really outstanding. I mean, of course that's been a long time ago now, but the jet's got some age on it, and it breaks every once in a while. And I think we'd shut down a motor or two. It was about as bad as it got. Had a few hydraulic leaks, that kind of thing. But for the most part, they were very reliable. And so, no, not anything really, white knuckle like that. We did have a bird strike one night all over the front windshield. And, the pilot's, I was in the co-pilot seat. Pilot's side was couldn't see a thing. And I had this little triangle that I could see out of. And he goes, well, I guess you're landing. And that was kind of fun because it was like looking down a soda tube, just sort of, hope this works. But no, that's nothing serious, nothing real serious.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Nice. We like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I'll tell you what, before we get into the opening story, why don't we take just a couple quick minutes and thank the fine folks over at FTIratings.com who help bring these stories to you.
Hey everyone, today we're diving into something that all you aspiring airline pilots and those needing an ATP or a type certificate will want to tune into. Flight Training International, or FTIratings.com. Since its inception in 1993, FTI has been dedicated to elevating the standards of pilot training.
That's right, Fig, but FTI isn't your ordinary flight school. It's a veteran-founded institution that's all about delivering high-quality and cost-effective training across a wide spectrum of airliners. From the Airbus to Boeing simulators, their training covers it all, and these simulators mimic the exact conditions you'll face in the real world.
Yeah, these simulators are no joke. They're the same full-motion, FAA-certified beasts used by all the major airlines all over the world. This means every training session isn't just a lesson, it's a real-world experience. Plus, the instructors have been where you are. Transitioning from military jets to commercial airliners is smoother than ever.
And the credentials these instructors bring to the table are impeccable. We're talking about professional pilots with previous military experience and decades of flying commercial airliners around the globe. They're here to guide you, to teach you, and to ensure that you're ready to handle everything from transatlantic crossings to tight landings at bustling international airports.
FTI also offers special programs like ATP CTP, which stands for Airline Transport Pilot Certification Training Program. That's been mandated by Congress to ensure pilots are thoroughly prepared for the demands of modern aviation. And the best part? All this can be accessed from wherever you are, thanks to their innovative training materials available on your iPad.
Nice. And because we love giving our listeners the best deals, here's one just for you. Mention So There I Was when you sign up for your first course at FTI and get a sweet $100 off. Whether you're a seasoned pilot looking to up your skills or a military aviator aiming for the commercial skies, FTI is your launching pad.
So what are you waiting for? Check out FTIratings.com. That's FTIratings.com. Join the ranks of their esteemed alumni, including pilots from the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, and even the FAA. If they trust FTI, you can too.
Absolutely, Fig. And don't forget that you can use your veterans benefits to pay for the cost of FTI. So gear up, check your avionics, and prepare for takeoff. Go to FTIratings.com and get started today. Your future as a top-tier airline pilot starts at Flight Training International. That's why FTIratings.com is the best option for you. Don't just fly, soar with FTI. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, FTI. We appreciate your support making this podcast possible. So before we get all the way into your story, so you were guard guys over there doing this. How long had you been there when this happened?
We arrived, I've got to remember, I think we arrived New Year's Day, if I remember right. We were supposed to be there a day earlier and had some weather and took an extra day. So I think we got there January 1, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And then the war kicked off January 17th, the official start date. And that was really kind of I'll take a minute here just because it was a fun thing, because we did stuff we'd never trained for, honestly. First briefing we had, I remember them, nobody knew what Saddam's Air Force was going to be like. It was said to be pretty good. They said you can expect some losses. In fact, we're thinking it could be like 25% of the tankers.
That's big.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you guys are fighter pilots, right? I mean, tanker guys are like, wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute. 25%.
Wait, what? 2 to 5%?
Yeah. So as it turns out, I mean, they actually had, we were up near and over the border and doing some things. But the first night, they needed a 5-ship of KC-135s. We were going to refuel 15 Strike Eagles. They were going after Scud sites over in Syria. And we were taking them on right up to the border, dropping them off. And then another group was going to come bring them back. The thing of it was, they wanted this to be done between 3,000 and 4,500 feet, AGL, Whoa. Which for us is kind of low level. I mean, it's not low level.
Yeah.
For you guys, but it's for us it is. And especially when you're refueling, 15, you got 20 airplanes in the dark, because it's midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever time it was. And we had to do it in what's called MCON 4, Emission Condition 4, which basically meant turn all your switches off. We had no emitters at all, no lights at all. We just had those little fluorescent things on the airplane that hopefully the fighter guys could see, and hopefully we could see. And as it turns out, they picked 5 air crews from our unit for that, mostly because we had some old experienced lieutenant colonels as aircraft commanders, most who had flown in Vietnam. So they said, all right, we'll give it to the old guys. You guys ought to be able to do it. And then they had young co-pilots who could actually see at night, which, as it turns out, was a thing, because the aircraft commander said, "You see him? You see him?" Yeah.
So where were you in that mix? Were you a lieutenant? Were you a captain? Where were you in your career at that point?
I was a captain at that point. Still wasn't an aircraft commander, which was interesting because one of my UPT classmates showed up in a B-52 and he was an instructor pilot. But, we do things at a different pace in the Guard.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I was a right seat captain at the time. And
okay.
It was, but that night was really, I mean, it went off, no problems, but that was new for all of us. And we'd find out later, we do things that just we hadn't done before. And for the most part, it all went pretty well.
What were the main things that you found yourself, say, getting waivers for that you hadn't trained for?
Oh, everything from, little stuff mostly that would have been back in training environments you just wouldn't take in the airplane, or you wouldn't go to those altitudes, or you wouldn't go to those spots. We'd often go over to the B-52 guys to get the intel briefing from them, because our intel briefing was mostly CNN, and find out we had air refueling tracks over a known SAM site. It's like, well, that's probably not a good place for that.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's
and it was,
probably not a good idea.
We also talked a lot about how to get out of situations, because we'd be up near the border somewhere, right over the border, and be refueling, and you'd hear AWACS call out a bogey. And it was always fun to listen to, because as they got closer, it'd be like, I don't know, pick a number, 50, 40, 30, no longer a factor. Because somebody took care of it. And they always did take care of it. It was great. That was fun to listen to those engagements.
Right. Oh man, no kidding. Yeah, I think you got some pushback for pushing back, didn't you, Fig? For going, why the hell aren't we getting waivers now instead of just training for it in the first place? How hard is that?
Yeah, that was a. So I went from active duty Marine Corps into the Guard, and you talk about a culture shock. Holy shit, right? And I was always very frustrated and amazed at the restrictions that were always put on us during training. And then, you go to war and suddenly all these restrictions are lifted and everything is waived because it's a contingency. And I'm like, what? How is this? Why don't we train like this? because now we're doing shit that's different, and that's usually not good all the time.
Amen, brother. First time is not the best time to be doing it when you're in a critical situation. So
not the time to learn when the bullets are flying.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, so you guys were constantly coming up on that, right? This is the first big conflict for anybody really since Vietnam.
Yeah, no, since Vietnam, and Vietnam was, that's why we had some of those guys that had been flying tankers. They'd been over the stuff, and that helped. I mean, too, because you had some experience in the cockpit. You had guys that said, "Hey, this is nobody's shooting at us," which is a different deal. So it's that helps some. But yeah, you're right. I'm with you, Fig. Train for what you're going to do. Everybody says you fight like you train. Well, train like you're going to fight then.
Bingo. Absolutely. Oh, I hate hearing that happens, but I imagine it's still happening. But
yeah, I think I think it does. I think it does. Yeah. It's the nature of the beast in some ways.
So what time of day was it when you find yourself with half your power supply?
Oh, I had to go back and look because I'd forgotten. We took off about 5:30 in the afternoon, so sun was getting low, and this was about 45 minutes into the flight or so. I guess I might as well get into it. Let's absolutely. I just I guess that was what I was going to ask you to then next describe what you remember from that flight. Normal, everything's normal, going easy, going well. Well, we pretty much at that point, this was February 6th, and the air war, if you will, was, well in hand, but we still had a tremendous need for gas. And so we were launching a lot of sorties. And so everybody was flying at least once a day, sometimes twice. And this was our first go of the evening. And so, you go in, you brief, and you do all that stuff like normal. You find out where your airplane's parked. And as it turns out, another crew from our unit had an airplane parked next to ours. They actually had a CT, a control time with their receiver that was ahead of ours. Okay. So they should take off ahead of us. But because of the way the airplanes were parked, and that's not a great picture, but it gives you an idea, there was nowhere for them to get around us on the ground. It just couldn't happen. Taxiways were full. Parking lot was full. There was one way to get to the runway, and that was it. And so when we got out to the airplanes and saw that, we just had a little briefing on the ground with them. And we said, look, we're going to go out here to a place. There was a pipeline that ran literally right across the desert. And we'd turn right there and go east straight down the pipeline. We said, as soon as we turn east, we're going to do what's effectively a lead change. And we're going to stay at our altitude. They're 500 feet below us. You're going to come out to the left, go 500 feet above us and accelerate and go get your receiver. The actual formation lead change is how we did it. And they said, sure. Okay. So that's the plan. And it was my leg. So I'm flying. We take off, we go out, we're settled at 25,000 feet, got the autopilot on, look out, see them. They come out to the left. I see them climb up, they accelerate. And we watched them for a minute and then, they're gone. So fine. Okay. So at that point, you kind of lean back in your seat a little bit. Oh, and I might add, this is the first flight over there since the war started that we didn't have our parachutes either on or in the seat.
Of course.
So now you don't need that. They're hanging in the back. Okay, good. So you kind of lean back in the seat, relax a little bit. We've got a while before we do anything else. And the yoke just sort of started shaking and turned to the left. The airplane didn't do anything, but the yoke did. And then I put my hands on it. I thought, about ready to punch the autopilot off, and it came back to normal.
Okay.
Damn stinky autopilot, right? It's just a junky old autopilot. It does stuff sometimes. You just don't know why. Didn't think anything about it. And then the airplane literally rolled 110 degrees, as faster than you could do it with the controls. It flipped to 110 degrees.
Wow.
So there's a moment where you're,
yeah.
What?
Heart skipping a beat and things coming out your back end.
What?
Well, it's an odd picture. It's not one you expect if you're not Tex Johnson on tank. It's just, it's the beginning of an aileron roll there. And so we obviously react. We crank the opposite yoke into it. It has absolutely no effect.
Oh,
and then the airplane literally flips 90 degrees the other way to the right. So now we're 90 degrees banked to the right. And it did it like that. Again, faster than you could do it with the controls.
Oh, boy.
So we get into a couple of those. They become a little less. Kevin Sweeney, the other pilot, reaches over and pulls up the speed brakes, which was genius because it just damped a lot of that movement that was coming off the airplane. And so it settled down, put speed brakes down. We got control of the airplane. It's at least straight up. We're going straight in the line. But we do have the whole front is lit up with lights, fire lights, caution lights.
Oh, boy.
The two engines on the left side are indicating, one's this way, one's that way. One throttle's all the way back, can't be moved. The other one's somewhere else. I mean, it's a mess. And we have no idea what the hell just happened. It's like, what? Where did that come from? Yeah. Did we hit something? Did something hit us?
You had two fire lights. The two left engines, fire lights were on?
Two left engine fire lights were on. Of course, we've got boldface for fire, but we're heavy. We're full loaded gas. We don't really want to turn the motors off. We don't have to. So that's when we sent the boom back. And Steve had been in the back doing some paperwork, standing at the galley. And, of course, it tossed him all over the place. So he's a little bruised and bent.
What the hell are you doing up there?
Yeah. He's like, what'd you guys do? Because it's always our fault. And so I said, hey, go look out the left window. Tell us, are the engines on fire? And that's when he came back with no, they're not on fire. They're gone.
Well, they may be on fire, but I don't know where they are.
The engines were just gone, like detached from the pylons, or the pylons were gone as well.
So pylon mounted. You can see on that one on the right side. It hangs down off a pylon.
44 minutes into the YouTube video, it's a picture of the airplane after they landed.
Okay, so that's the actual airplane, huh?
That's the actual airplane. Yeah.
It looks like something in the boneyard, doesn't it, Fig?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not something that just landed.
No.
Well, I don't know if it's a design feature or not, but each engine is held on by 3 bolts, and there's a point where they detach, obviously, and it's about 2 point some odd G's, call it just under 3 G's. I don't know if that's meant to not tear off the wing, which would be worse, or if that's just how strong the bolts are. But yeah, they came off and ripped a couple of holes in the wing. You'll see that. So the airplane's got gas in the wings, also in the belly. So all the gas that was in the left wing, of course, drains out pretty quickly.
Well, so it's not like you need it.
Well, no.
You're not going to burn it.
You never have too much gas, if you're on fire. Right. Or it's too heavy. So it was an interesting load, if you will, because now the right side's really heavy, and it's got the engines. The left side's really light. And you'd think it would just be squirrely as hell. As it turns out, it wasn't that bad. Theory is the left wing with the wings or with the engines hanging on it, which are kind of heavy, you get rid of the engines and it actually twists up just a little bit. So you get just a little more angle of attack on the left side, and you got the thrust and the weight on the right side, and they kind of counteracted. And so with about 10 or 15 degrees of yoke and a little bit of rudder, it'd go in a straight line.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. But it wouldn't maintain altitude. We just didn't have enough thrust to maintain altitude. So we're in a slow descent. We're dumping gas at this point out of the other wing and out of the body. We got to get some weight off the airplane. The pumps are hydraulically driven. So instead of having 4, we've now got 2. So that slows down a little bit as well. The whole hydraulic on the left side's gone, obviously. So we finally get enough weight off the airplane. We get down to about 16,000 feet. And we could maintain altitude. And so we stayed there. We gathered ourselves, if you will.
Yeah.
Still couldn't figure out why it happened, but I guess at that point it really didn't matter. And so we kind of looked at each other. Everybody was calm, cool, no yelling, no screaming, no nothing. It was just like, what the? And so our navigator gets on the radio and calls our receiver and says, we're not going to be there. You might want to find somebody else to get you some gas.
Make other plans.
We're farther out. We can't call
We're
home.
busy.
Customer comes first. So now we got to decide what we're going to do. We don't have a checklist for 2 engines not on the airplane. And but we run the checklist we have. We also thought, that might be a good time to find those parachutes. So the boom operator goes so they're hanging on a rack clear at the very tail end of the airplane above the boom pod. And he has to go back and find them. And they're, everything's in a jumble back there. But he finds them and brings them up. And so now we got to get out of the seat, get your parachute strapped on. Well, it turns out, which is a good thing, our boom operator is also a pilot. He built a long, easy, very active general aviation pilot. So he could probably land the airplane better than I could. But, so he gets in the seat and flies while we're getting our gear on. And so everybody gets all geared up, got our helmets, got our parachutes on, just in case, because we do have a bailout checklist.
It's a crew of 4. Is that right, Jay? Crew of 4. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 2 pilots, navigator, and a boom operator. So Kevin Sweeney's on the left. He was the aircraft commander. Greg Murmas, our navigator. That was me in much younger days. And then Steve Stuckey, our boom operator.
Okay.
And just so everybody understands, we're guard guys. So Kevin was an IBM salesman. That was his day job. Greg was a lawyer. I was a lawyer. And Steve was actually full-time at the Guard. He was ended up being their chief boom, ultimately ended up becoming the wing's command chief. Great guy. Wow. And so that was us. So we're, a bunch of part-timers that are, flying the airplane at this point.
Nice.
So now we're kind of trying to decide, what do we do next?
Right.
Were you over Indian country when it happened?
No, we hadn't gotten there yet. We were still quite a ways south, and we got the airplane turned around. Greg gave us a heading, and we did a controllability check down to 200 knots, and we didn't think it was gonna fall out of the air, so we left that alone and started to head back towards Jeddah, because there really wasn't a better place to go. I think the F-111s were at Taif, and some controller kept wanting us to land at Taif. You land Taif, you land Taif. No land Taif. No. And at some point, you just turn the radio off because not listening to that.
Thanks for the offer.
So we're headed back to Jeddah, and sort of got the airplane under control. Have a plan. If it all goes to hell, we're going to go out over the Red Sea and jump out, and let the government have the airplane back. Otherwise, we're going to land it. And we don't have hydraulics on that side, which controls the gear. So boom operator has to manually lower the gear. We asked Steve, how long is that going to take? And he said, well, probably 3 to 4 minutes. I think Kevin said, well, you got 3, because once they come down, they're not coming up, and we don't have enough power to go around. So, we're going to be on final when they come down.
Wow.
So that was all exciting.
Yeah.
And then at some point, we were headed right over Mecca, which I think would have been the worst thing that could have happened during the wars if an airplane flew over Mecca. And we started getting these calls, and Greg, our navigator, said, look, let's just go around. We can make a couple of turns. So we made a couple of turns so we didn't fly over Mecca. So that was probably the best thing we did all night. But after that, it was literally just get it home. It was dark at this point, and we still had instruments. We were able to fly an ILS into, I think it was the left side. It's 3-runway, huge airport at King Abdulaziz in Jeddah. And of course, it didn't have anti-skid either. And so we land, and we know we got one application of brakes, and we still had, Kevin brought the speed brakes up, but he also brought the inboard thrust reverser up. And it just got the interlock, and about that time, the right wing started to come out, and he slammed that thing down and says, not tonight. So we kind of jumped on the brakes a little bit. I think we ended up blowing 6 tires, but it literally came to rest on the center line. Great landing. And, at that point, we just...
Actually, without brakes, blown tires probably slow you down a little more.
Yeah. I mean, those flat ones don't roll as fast. So
yeah,
it was, we jump out. Yeah. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, we jump out, and there's everybody's there. Of course, we've drawn a crowd at this point, because not only when Steve went back to get the parachutes, apparently one of them had activated the emergency beacon. So a whole bunch of guys thought we'd crashed, and they were calling in, wondering what the hell was going on. And then you get a crowd of lookers, and of course, we had to get the airplane off the runway because we got operations still going on.
Yeah.
But it was so it didn't take.
Well, you could turn left.
Drug it off the runway, got the tires fixed, and parked it over to the side.
All right, so I'm dying to know what why did the airplane roll, and what happened to the motors?
So the motors were found out in the desert, two entirely different places. One, believe this is an absolute truth, a camel herder turned one of them in, came in and said, "Hey, it almost killed my camels." He was kind of pissed, but at least they knew where it was.
Camels.
So they sent a truck after each one and picked them up. Nobody could really figure out what happened here. And of course, you got to go, pee in a bottle and go through the investigation part and get interviewed and all that. Boeing shows up because it's their airplane and they want to know what's going on. We've got investigators from the Air Force there. Ultimately, it was determined that the wake vortices of the airplane that went around us and changed positions with us created, in essence, a tornado that we flew through. And that was the cause of the incident. Heavily loaded airplane, clean wingtips, and it really does create a lot of wake turbulence. And more livestock.
And it was the rate of roll that slung the motors off. Is that what I'm picking up with?
So in Boeing, I've got an animation somewhere, but the initial 110-degree bank really didn't do anything. When it flipped to the 90-degree right, that exceeded the G-forces that were allowed on the left pylons. And literally, I think the number 3 engine came off first, probably took the number 2 rather, and probably took the number 1 with it as it slid off.
Number 1 with it.
But in any event, it was enough of a G on that turn to separate those two. And we found out later the 2 engines on the right side, all 3 bolts in each of those engines were about half sheared. So they were close.
Oh, shit.
Coming off. In which case, everything gets really simple, right? I mean, it's jump out. And
well, really quiet anyway.
Yeah, really, really quiet.
So, wow, that's scary. So wake. So I was guessing it had something to do with the airplane that I thought maybe they hit you or something. But so wake turbulence rolled the airplane, snap rolled it the other way, slung the motors off, and almost slung all the motors off. Okay.
Yeah, our money at the time was on the autopilot. We were pretty sure the rudder, hard over rudder for a minute or something happened, but no.
Oh yeah.
That was also a moment coming home. We decided we're going to try that yaw damper, very gently push that switch, and it worked.
Okay.
How do you bail out of a KC-135?
Well,
which door? I mean, where's the exit?
There's a crew entry hatch that is right behind the pilot seats, and it's actually got a wind deflector. When you pull a bar down, there's a wind deflector that pushes down in front of the front part of it, so that when you fall out, supposedly, the wind blast doesn't push you back into the airplane. Okay. You really can't do it with the wheels down. That's a really bad idea. Okay. But at altitude, there's a pretty decent chance of getting out.
So you go. Okay. So you're jumping out a hole in the bottom, basically.
Yeah. Essentially, it blows that hatch off, and you just fall out, jump out.
Okay.
I
didn't know there was an escape hatch. I learned something new.
Well, it's actually it's where we go up and down every day. It's how we get in and out of the airplane on them.
Oh, okay. All right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Comes up and down. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And just terrifying.
That is terrifying. I mean, can you imagine how quiet it would have got if the other two slung off when the airplane rolled the other way, and then it was like, this is a whole different story.
Oh yeah.
And how many you said of the number 3 and number 4 engine that was still on? They're held on by 3 bolts, and how many? Two of them were sheared on each motor.
Well, no,
is that what you said?
All 6 of the bolts, 3 on each engine, all of them were partially sheared,
torqued. Oh shit!
Kind of.
Yeah. That must have been some just magnificent forces, centrifugal forces.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
I can't even imagine, honestly. It was,
Yeah.
And the airplane itself, there wasn't any wrinkle in the, anywhere else. I mean, because Boeing makes a hell of a
You told
plane.
me this in pre-chat. I was shocked about this, the answer to this question.
Ricky and I were talking about this. Boeing came over, and after all was said and done, it's parked over on the side, and some guy puts a laser on it, because we're pretty sure it's twisted, right? It's got to be.
Right. Shit, yeah.
It's got to be bent somewhere. And they put a laser on it, and they said, no, the airplane's fine. Patch that wing up, hang some motors on it, and you're good. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they did. It took a while. I mean, somebody had to go back over and work on it, but it flew at home. It was actually a Grissom reserve airplane. But as I told Repeat, we trade those around oftentimes, and it ultimately ended up back in our unit as a flying airplane.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Interesting. The serial number is 58-0013. So Balls-13 was a famous airplane for a long time.
Balls-13. That's great.
There's a show title right there, Balls-13. I was looking at a couple other options, but there you go, Balls-13. Oh, man.
That's a testament to Boeing, though, really.
It is a huge testament to the strength of that wing and to the Boeing airplane.
Well, I was thinking for sure, the wing and the tail, it would have twisted the fuselage a little bit, all that torque on that tube. But holy shit, man. That's incredible.
The 707 KC-135, it's a classic airplane. It's a Stearman. It's a DC-3. It's that kind of an airplane. And once you fall in love with her, I mean, you're going to stay there. I mean, no hydraulics, none of that stuff on the controls, but if it's trimmed up, it flies beautifully, and tremendously reliable airplane. So that was one of their better efforts, no doubt.
How long were you down after that med down, investigation down, whatever? Because you were combat guys, you had to go back, right?
Yeah. So that was the night of the 6th. We had the next day where we did the interviews and accident investigation stuff, and we were flying again on the 8th. And
2 days.
Get out there.
No, 1 day, really. 1 day.
Yeah.
We happened on the 6th. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's
take a day off, boys.
Come back after since then, that first turn with the autopilot was pretty gentle.
Right. And here's the next question: were you wearing your silk with you on the next ride?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, the first nights we had them all on. We were ready to go because we didn't know what was going to happen. At that point, they'd put the cushions back in the chairs, and we thought, it can't happen twice. So,
right.
All right, Jay, what is the most challenging part of the KC-135 mission as a pilot? What's the most challenging part of that?
Well, great question. And, it's changed over the years too, because we lost the navigator, but we picked up all this really cool gear in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And I'd say now it's really managing all the technology, because you got all kinds of stuff. It's all the stuff you guys have got in the airlines too. But I mean, it's, you're typing stuff now instead of talking on the radio. You're not listening to HF. It's, you're in charge of all the navigation. So it has moved a lot of responsibility up to the front two guys and gals that are driving the airplane. And that's managing that, I think, is particularly in a combat support situation, is probably, just knowing where you are and knowing where everybody else is.
Did you guys did force extender aerial refueling yourselves, right? I mean, the tankers got aerial refueled.
Ours did not.
Point, yes?
There are a few called T models that can be a receiver. The bulk of the fleet is not receiver. They just don't have the hole up there. All the new ones do. All the KC-46s, they're all go two ways. But ours were not. Most of ours were not.
Okay.
Yeah, KC-10 guys, man, felt sorry for them, because if we had gas left over after refueling and we're headed back, you dumped it in the KC-10. And they just kept getting dumped in the KC-10. They just went,
and they just stayed on station. Well, I can tell you, I have, my very first experience with, Air Force tankers was when we were going to Japan. We were taking our airplanes from Cherry Point to Japan, and we were, 110 miles or so off the West Coast, and we were supposed to fly to a point, and the KC-10s were going to be there. We had to be there at this specific time. And I'm telling you what, as we're about to hit the point, here are they. They're coming at us, and they did a 180-degree turn and rolled out right in front of us, right in the spot they were supposed to be at the time we were supposed to be there. 3 of them. And I thought, okay, that's pretty shit hot.
Yeah. How do they know how to do that?
How did they do that?
That was amazing.
It's a little math problem, but it's not that hard. You can also look out and see guys and turn in front of them. But that's the standard rendezvous right there. It's I can't imagine being in your guys' seats, somewhere north of Guam on your way from Japan to Hawaii. We refueled a KC-10 one night. He had a bunch of little guys with him, and everybody was just constantly getting gas because where are you going to go? And
right.
It turns out the 10 had a deployed thrust reverser, so he was burning a ton of gas, and they were lower than they were supposed to be. And he needed more. He was trying to get to Hawaii. And so pick a number. We're supposed to give him X. We ended up giving him, basically everything we had. It's 3:00 in the morning, and we're supposed to go back to Guam. And so now we're going, was that a good idea? We're a little skosh here. So we rocket up to like 43 or 44, whatever it was, and try to skyhook home. And of course, there's a cloud over Guam. It's the only one in the ocean.
Well, it helps you find it. That's how we find a carrier. It's under the thunderstorm.
Yeah, right. So that was kind of fun. We land and crew chief's wondering why the nose gear's extended completely, and why you won't shut the engines down until he puts the tail stand in. It's like, no, really, you need to do that. So yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's honestly great to assist everybody else in their. It's a big Air Force, and everybody needs everybody for it to work. And being part of that was really awesome. It was a lot of fun.
Now, as with many of our other guests, you are a typical underachiever. And let's see, you retired as a brigadier or a major general in the Kansas Guard?
Brigadier, one star, yeah.
Oh, only 1 star. What a slacker.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, come on.
Luck is a great thing. Let me tell you, timing is everything.
So, at one point, did you do the squadron commander tour and the wing commander tour, or OG, or what was your career path?
Well, being a part timer, our unit at least tried to maintain a mix of part time and full time people in leadership positions, because you got to have somebody there to do certain things. And so I had a couple. Wasn't squadron commander, was the vice commander of the wing, and enjoyed that a ton. We had some great people, about 1,000 people in our wing, and just getting to know all the folks that you didn't know before. You're sitting here ops centric, worried about whatever you're worried about, and you got people down in maintenance, you got people over in support. They're all busting their tails too. And so it was really the best part of that job was really understanding and getting to know the rest of the wing, and just literally got lucky. Timing was good when there was an opportunity to move up. We called it, say, assistant adjutant general, and you're also the commander of the Air National Guard in your state. Kansas has 2 wings. It's got the 190th Refueling Wing in Topeka. It's got the 184th, which then was an intel wing. Now it's just 184th Wing down in Wichita at McConnell. And then we've also got the range, Smoky Hill, which, Fig, you may have been there in the 130. I don't know. But it gets a lot of traffic from a lot of different airplanes.
Yeah, we did that actually. We used the threat. We went over there and did threat reactions.
Yeah. So that was great too, because again, learned a whole bunch of stuff about the capabilities we had in the state, and it was a tremendous experience. So I enjoyed every bit of that too. Got to sit on the Air National Guard Strategic Planning Committee, which doesn't sound very sexy, but we would literally sit around and talk about what's going to happen in the Air National Guard over the next 5 to 10 years and make those recommendations up to the 3-star.
For all airframes or just the tanker airframe community?
It was all airframes. So this was literally the Air National Guard strategic planning for the entire 108,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that was really awesome. And all the people that sat on that ended up being adjutants general, 2-star, 3-star kind of people. And it was, it's a good group. I mean, they really put a lot of effort into that.
Oh, that's
pretty
fantastic.
Awesome. Well, how many hours did you end up with in the tanker? Rough numbers.
I had a timeout in the middle of that career. I ended up with about 3,000 hours. So there's guys that have 5, 6, 7 that just fly the wings off of them. I got to fly a lot more.
Whereas you were just flying the engines off.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, there is that. Maybe they didn't, that was side, son. Well, and the other job kind of takes its toll too, because there were some great trip opportunities that we got that I just couldn't or wouldn't do because of my other job. Uh-huh. And so I didn't get to go to Australia for 2 weeks because I had to show up at work.
Not looking good. Looks like his internet may have died, and I hope I'm not talking over him. If I am, I will be able to take my microphone down and put his sound back in. But I'm afraid we have lost General J.
He's frozen on.
He's very frozen
too. Well, damn it!
So, a terrible way to end the show, but I think we say, General, thank you for your service. We're thankful that you were a skilled crew that brought that airplane back, and we thank you and your bride and all the families who support their veterans out there in making defense of our nation happen.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you also to Dave Hamilton over at Mac Geek Gab, The Gig Gab, and The Business Brain, also owner of Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. That handles our advertising. We need thanks also to Badass over at bdsaviationphotography.com.
Thanks, Badass.
Let's see. What else?
Thanks for letting us use those beautiful pictures.
Good photos. We didn't kill any livestock. No livestock were harmed in the making of this episode, but we certainly had him try.
That's a great picture.
They got within a camel's hair of losing some camels on that one. So,
and that picture he put up there, that's I say thanks to our producer that's in the background there, Sticks.
Yeah, Sticks.
Literally one of the two
Sticks.
brains of the operation.
Right. How he gets that stuff done. Oh, we haven't mentioned it in a while. If you've got questions or comments, write us at repeat@sothereiwas.us if you want to get a hold of Fig.
Fig@sothereiwas.us.
There you go. And if you want a real answer, Sticks at sothereiwas.us or Bago at sothereiwas.us. Yeah. Give him a look-see. Go over to our merch store, sothereiwas.us/merch. If you want to get an extra, we aren't going to get one from the General this week because he's gone. But we publish extra exclusive only to people who support us on Patreon, sothereiwas.us/Patreon. We get you an extra story here and there when we can. It's a way of saying thank you for supporting us. We don't know why you do it, but we're grateful that you do.
Very humbling and appreciative. Thank you.
Yeah. Trying to think. Anyone else, Fig, come to mind?
Let's see. Oh, hey.
Yeah.
The music in the background. That's the Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. That's the music of the Dos Gringos.
Both of them. That one.
Both of them.
Those.
They have 4 albums, and there's not one bad song.
No.
You cannot have a bad day listening to those songs.
Fantastic song. And for those of you curious, our theme song is 12-inch penis. So be advised. It gets a little salty in there. Hey, thank you to FTIratings.com for continuing to support us. Thank you to all the people listening live. We appreciate everything that you do to help make this show as successful as it is. You want to go over to sothereiwas.us/rate, give us a 5-star rating. Boom. We'd much appreciate it. Not 4.
If you can't give us 5 stars, tell us what we can do to make it 5 stars, because for crying out loud, we're trainable.
Just ask us.
Proved it. Over and over. We've proved it.
Right? Exactly. So, until next week, stay safe and check 6.
Check 6. What?
crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. What do you say, Fig?
He said it's over.
I just want to tell you both, good luck. We're all counting on you.
And we're out.